The story begins with a man injecting a green liquid into an egg, causing it to split immediately into two. The scene cuts to workers creating a Hollywood star for Elisabeth Sparkle. In reality, Elisabeth is a beautiful model and the host of a popular television show. For a period, people frequently visited her star to take selfies. Over time, the public attention shifted away from her and the star eventually cracked. No one bothered to repair it, which symbolized that interest in Elisabeth was rapidly fading. The narrative then shifts to Elisabeth celebrating her 50th birthday. She has aged significantly, but still continues to host the same show. Following a taping, she found the ladies' restroom closed and entered the men's restroom. Inside, she overheard the show director talking on his phone. The director complained that Elisabeth was no longer what she used to be. He mentioned that the show ratings were falling because of her and stated his intention to replace her with a younger and more beautiful girl. Hearing this, Elisabeth felt completely shattered because the beauty she once relied on was gone. She stared at the wrinkles in the mirror, feeling deeply grieved by both her fading youth and her sudden dismissal. Seeking answers, she confronted the director directly. The director bluntly told her that the show relied on giving the audience youth and beauty, which she no longer possessed. Devastated by his words, Elisabeth drove away in a state of distress. Distracted by her racing thoughts, she failed to notice an oncoming vehicle and suffered a terrible car crash. Surprisingly, she escaped the horrific accident without a single scratch on her body. After being discharged from the hospital, she wept openly upon seeing her billboards being torn down along the streets. While she was leaving, a nurse checked her spine and handed over her coat. Inside the pocket, Elisabeth discovered a hidden flash drive and a message that read, "It changed my life." The drive was labeled The Substance. At home, Elisabeth played the video, which explained a magical fluid called the Substance. This fluid allowed an older person to create a younger version of themselves. Another fluid kept the old and new bodies connected. The process required the user to switch between the two bodies every 7 days without exception. To stabilize the young body, the user had to extract a specialized fluid from the spine of the old body and inject it daily. While one body was active, the other remained entirely unconscious. Initially, Elisabeth believed the drive was a hoax and threw it in the trash. Later that night, looking at old photographs of her youth caused her to suffer an emotional breakdown. In a desperate state, she sent a message to the provided number requesting the substance. The voice on the phone asked for her address and instructed her to visit a specific location. The next morning, Elisabeth saw a newspaper advertisement looking for her replacement, which deepened her depression. She also received a black envelope containing a specific number. Following the instructions, Elisabeth went to a remote hidden locker room. She used her number card to access a locker and brought a large box back to her apartment. Inside the box, she found a single-use serum, a syringe, a stabilizer kit, and switching equipment, along with specialized food for both bodies. After hesitating in front of her bathroom mirror, Elisabeth injected the green fluid into her arm. Soon after, she experienced excruciating pain. Her eyeballs seemed to double and her spine suddenly tore open. A young and exceptionally beautiful girl emerged from inside her older body. The new version admired her reflection in disbelief before stitching up the back of the older body. She then attached a food bag to the unconscious older Elisabeth to keep her alive. The following morning, the young version woke up with a nosebleed. Remembering the instructions, she extracted the stabilizing fluid from the older body spine and injected it into herself, which stopped the bleeding. This younger version decided to call herself Sue. Sue went to the audition for her old show and immediately stunned the director, who hired her on the spot. Sue requested to take a leave every week, claiming she needed to visit her sick mother in a distant village. The director readily accepted her terms. Sue quickly achieved massive fame and accumulated millions of followers while her billboards filled the city. After 6 days passed, Sue realized the 7th day required her to switch back to Elisabeth. Upon returning to her old body, Elisabeth visited her office, where the director handed her a final severance package and insulted her deeply. When 7 days ended, Elisabeth transformed back into Sue. The young version wanted to enjoy her glamorous lifestyle without any distractions. Fearing her secret would be exposed, Sue decided to build a hidden wall inside her apartment to conceal Elisabeth. The loud hammering disturbed a neighbor who came to complain, but he was instantly dazed by Sue's beauty. Sue rudely slammed the door on him and finished creating the secret room where she hid the old body. As her fame grew, Sue hid all of Elisabeth's old photographs away. She became so consumed by her success that she neglected the weekly switching deadline. When her body began to experience a sudden nosebleed, she chose to extract more fluid from Elisabeth instead of switching. After delaying the switch for another week, Sue finally returned to Elisabeth's body and discovered that one of her fingers had decayed. Terrified, she called the company for assistance. The representative informed her that the damage was permanent and reminded her that both versions were actually the same single being. Elisabeth later collected her routine refills and encountered an old man at a restaurant. She noticed a familiar mark on his hand and realized he was the older version of the hospital nurse. The old man cryptically asked if her new body had started feeding on her yet, causing her to flee in terror. Back home, Elisabeth tried to regain her confidence by dressing up and doing her makeup like Sue. However, seeing Sue's massive posters outside broke her spirit. She ruined her makeup and began binge eating in deep depression before falling asleep. The story shows her switching back to Sue for a major television event. During a performance, a large growth appeared on Sue's stomach. In the restroom, she pulled a whole chicken out of her body, which was the food Elisabeth had eaten. This sequence turned out to be a horrific nightmare. In reality, Sue went to the studio only to find the crew packing up. The director informed her that the regular show was cancelled because she was chosen to host the prestigious New Year Eve special. Sue accepted immediately, even though the event fell exactly on her switching day. She remained in Sue's body for weeks, continually draining the older Elisabeth for stabilization fluid. When Sue finally switched back, she found Elisabeth completely decrepit, withered, and bald due to the excessive draining. Elisabeth grew to hate Sue and smashed her pictures in the apartment. She called the company asking to reverse the process, but the representative stated nothing could be changed unless she chose to terminate the cycle permanently. Elisabeth received a call from the network and decided to switch back to Sue one last time. Upon switching, Sue ruthlessly extracted 3 months' worth of fluid from Elisabeth at once. She enjoyed her life until the night before the special broadcast, when the fluid completely ran out. Her body began to fail and she found that Elisabeth's body could no longer produce any serum. The company told her she must switch back to Elisabeth and wait for new serum to form. Sue returned to the old body as a guest in her apartment, listened to the strange noises. Elisabeth locked herself in the bathroom to hide her horrific bald and deformed appearance. Desperate, she called the company to terminate everything. She received the termination fluid, but hesitated when she remembered it would freeze her in her current hideous state forever. In a fit of rage, Elisabeth attempted to inject the termination fluid into the sleeping Sue. She stopped halfway, realizing she still wanted the fame and praise of the New Year special. When Sue would not wake up, Elisabeth used an activator directly on her, which resulted in both versions being fully conscious at the same time. Furious that Elisabeth tried to kill her, Sue brutally beat the old woman until Elisabeth died from a cracked skull. Sue then cleaned the bathroom and left for the broadcast, where the crowd cheered for her. Suddenly, her teeth began to fall out and her ear and fingernails detached in the elevator. Realizing her body was collapsing without the original Elisabeth, she ran home and injected the original single-use substance. This triggered a violent mutation where her back tore open and a monstrous hybrid of both Sue and Elisabeth emerged. The confused creature pasted Sue's picture over its face and walked onto the live stage. The picture fell off, revealing the monster to the audience. The crowd panicked and a man struck the creature with a baseball bat, causing its body to rupture. Blood sprayed across the entire studio as the creature disintegrated. The remaining piece of Elisabeth's face crawled over to her Hollywood star on the street. She smiled up at the sky before exploding into a pool of blood, which cleanup workers washed away the next morning.